guys survived that nasty Arctic blast. I might say this again, I hate the cold, I really do. I don't, my body does not tolerate it very well, and besides which case, at least I guess thankfully for me, things seem to slow up quite a bit when it gets cold like that. I had a little bit going on, emergency-wise, but as far as my routine stuff goes, I can't do much type stuff for like castrations and dental work and things like that when it gets that cold. It's not safe on the horse, it's not safe for me, so those things pretty necessarily have to get rescheduled. However, I hear that it is supposed to be in the 50s today, or at least the 40s. Maybe I misread the weather report. I know we're supposed to get a couple days of really beautiful weather here. I am so excited. I'm so excited to see the snow gone by this afternoon. Pipes are finally unfreezing. Hope you guys survived that alright. I know that one of our drainage pipes froze at home, so while we did have drainage for most of our house, our kitchen sink was not draining, so we had like a week's worth of dishes that we had to like cart up and down the stairs to a sink that worked, and we had a lot of dishes to do yesterday when it finally did thaw enough to drain. Not seeing too many leaks, thank goodness, but I'm dreading the moment when they start rearing their ugly head. Anyways, so today what I am planning on talking about is a little bit more in line and in theme with our current weather pattern. So we're getting this warm, lovely spring weather. It is not going to take very much before that grass starts growing. We are going to start seeing green, which I'm really excited about because, man, that just new life. Come on, bring on this new season of life. I'm excited to see it, to say the least. However, we do have some horses that they don't take this newfound life very well. I'm talking about your horses with insulin dysregulation. Resistance is what it was formerly called. Metabolic syndrome horses and your Cushing's horses. They have problems with their insulin metabolism. And why is that important this time of year? Well, that spring grass, it is rapidly growing, and those grasses, those plants are very high in sugar content, sugar and simple starches. And that gets to be a problem for those horses because some of you probably know someone that has diabetes or has diabetes, and you're kind of familiar with how this works in people. When you eat a high sugary, starchy meal, your body seeks to control your blood sugar levels very tightly. This is what you call one of those it's a very evolutionarily protected mechanism within your body. It is vitally important to survival and to the survival of basically all multicellular species that insulin and sugar be controlled within a very specific concentration. So too much is a problem and too little is a problem. Too little and your cells can't function, and too much, it causes other derangements. So your body tries really, really, really taste buds, or when you're preparing to eat it, actually, even, your body starts to signal the pancreas to release insulin. When your blood sugar goes up, your body signals the pancreas to release insulin. So you eat that starchy meal to absorb those sugars, those starches, your blood glucose goes up, your body releases insulin. Insulin then interacts on the cells of your body, and it tells those cells to take in insulin, or to take in sugar, to take in blood glucose. When those cells take in that blood glucose from the blood concentration of glucose then goes down to a normal level, and that's how it's regulated. Where your problems come in is if you have a lot of chronic, repetitive, high sugary meals, because now your cells are exposed to a lot of insulin because your body's trying to control that blood glucose, and those cells basically start to ignore insulin. And chemically speaking, what's happening is those cells stop producing surface receptors that interact with insulin. So it takes more insulin to get the same effect as far as reducing your blood sugar level goes. And your body does that. It releases more insulin, and more insulin, and more insulin, and more insulin, whatever it takes to control your blood sugar. In humans, what eventually happens is the pancreas peters out. It just can't do it, and it can't produce it. Those little cells on the pancreas that produce insulin, they die, and they quit working. And that's what you call diabetes. And at that point, what happens is blood sugar starts to elevate well beyond normal levels. And so it elevates like that. That is not just a tiny little thing. That means that your body's control mechanisms have been well surpassed and crushed. Yeah, high glucose signifies a huge metabolic derangement. Okay, now in horses that doesn't happen. Horses, the pancreas of a horse never stops. I shouldn't say never. There are always exceptions to everything. I'm sure if I looked really hard, I could find a paper describing. I'm pretty sure I came across a paper once describing diabetes in a horse. So it does it could happen theoretically. It's probably not going to happen to your horse. I've never seen it. Glucose usually remains pretty normal in horses. They don't progress to the point where their pancreas stops insulin, and if they did, that's a huge problem, because I don't know how you would begin to manage a horse like that. Their bodies just keep producing more and more and more insulin, and we call that hyperinsulinemia. The Latin is your friend. Hyper meaning more, insulin referring to the hormone, and emia is referring to your blood. So it's too much insulin in your blood, basically levels of insulin in your blood. And that's a problem. In horses, for reasons that are not entirely understood as of yet, at some point I'm sure exact mechanisms, but suffice it to say, if you give a horse too much insulin, like you can inject to produce this, they will develop laminitis. For some reason, that insulin interacts with the lamina of their hoof. What is the lamina? So I described it this way once. I don't know where I pulled this out of, but if you think of example, a trampoline, and you're standing in the middle of the trampoline. Alright? You're the coffin bone. The little springs that are suspending you, that's going to be your lamina. And then the frame of the trampoline itself, that's going to be your hoof wall. So, when we're talking about the hoof, you have that hard frame, the hoof wall, and then you have the coffin bone in the center, and that's the entire weight of the horse there is bared on that coffin bone. And then you have tissue that's suspending the coffin bone within the hoof. It's going to be those little springs on the trampoline. And that's kind of what we're looking at. Now, there are normal mechanisms that take place within that hoof that allow that hoof wall to grow out, and for some reason, insulin acts on one of those pathways, and it causes that structure that's holding it all together to get really angry, and it weakens. And over time, it starts to stretch and it gets painful. So you get these horses that are a little bit ouchy on gravel or without shoes. Eventually, what happens is over time, it starts to stretch and tear. And the deep digital flexor tendon that's attached to the very tip of the coffin bone, it asymmetrically pulls the tip of that coffin bone away from the hoof wall, so you get rotation there. So when you have a horse that develops this hyperinsulinemia, their insulin levels go through the roof, it starts to act on those feet, and it starts to cause mild problems. Because it's both front feet, these problems tend to be unrecognized. It's hard to recognize a lameness in a horse when both front feet are equally lame. When we see a lame horse, we're seeing an asymmetry of their gait. We're seeing a head bob. We're seeing a difference in stride length. We're seeing a difference in the way they're tracking with their feet. And so now you're left, when you have a bilateral lameness like that, you are left trying to determine whether the way this horse is tracking is because of his conformation, or whether the way this horse is tracking is because he's got something in a part of his body. So it's hard to recognize. Typically, this gets to be quite progressed before you have a severe laminitic event where the horse goes really noticeably lame. This is hard to recognize without turning. And I guess one of the main points that I am trying to get to here is, having routine evaluations with your horse and your veterinarian is pretty important, because I'm probably going to be able to notice things that you don't notice. I'm probably going to be able to notice abnormal fat deposits on your horse. I'm probably going to be able to see subtle changes in the way that he's tracking his feet, and know that we need to do further testing to make sure that this is not a problem we're heading towards. You can test for hyperinsulinemia. It's very simple. You pull blood, you send it off, and you run a hormone panel, and they can test and they can tell you exactly how much insulin is in that horse's blood, or ACTH, one of the hormones associated with Cushing's disease. It's a very simple test. It's easy to run. And a lot of the times we can catch these horses early, because if we catch them early, we can do things to really reduce starches in their diet. And if we can reduce the amount of starches in their diet when they're in these early stages of that disease process, we can slow the disease so they get a lot more time where they're not painful on their feet. And sometimes we can stop an avoid them entirely. Sometimes on some horses, because some horses don't respond as well as we'd like, but others you can avoid it entirely. So I think it's really important to recognize, and I think this is something that tradition has not always been recognized, is that we really need to monitor these horses on a year-to-year basis. You can find insulin resistance in horses, young horses. I have had to put down 2- and 4-year-old horses off of founder due to being obese. I have done this before. It's awful, and it happens. It really happens. It usually happens later, but it can happen. So don't make sure that you pursue yearly monitoring for your horse as far as his health care goes. Have him checked out once a year when you have your spring vaccinations, and stay on top of these can and do happen to your horse. I'll try to make another video later this week or next week, and we'll talk about strategies and ways that we can reduce starches in your horse's diet, and go from there. But until then, I hope that you guys have a fantastic day. I hope that you have a fantastic